Hi everybody. This is feels about as awkward as it gets, but I'm gonna give it a shot to try to talk to you. I'm recording myself on Zoom for Boulder Books, which has been kind enough to ask me a few questions about my upcoming book, which is called Now We're Getting Somewhere. It's a book of poetry. So if that doesn't scare you, I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and with thanks to Boulder Books, because I have a friend who lives in Boulder, and I've been to the bookstore, and I did a reading there a few years ago for a memoir that I wrote. So I'm really grateful to them for having me back, even virtually, and I will try to answer a few questions for you. So the first one was what inspired me to write poetry, and I came to it late in my late 20s, and I didn't know anything about it. But when I first started reading poems, I was just kind of like, oh my God, what is this stuff? I need to know more. So I would go to bookstores and just, find the poetry section, which was usually tucked away somewhere, and I would just buy books based on their covers. So that was really exciting. And I discovered Denise Levertov that way. Book of hers called Life in the Forest that had a transparent woman on the cover. That's the way I first started reading poetry, and then I set about trying to learn how to write it. Um, let's see, a common theme in this book. I think it's a book for anyone, but it's especially, I think, for women and girls. There's a lot about female experience in it, and I've seen that a lot of women and younger women respond to my work, which I've been really gratified and happy about. But there's other kinds of poems too about, time and death, like all poets write about those things, and the world, our beleaguered, compromised, beautiful world. So there's a little bit of everything in there, but I think especially stuff for women's experience. Um, okay, this is an interesting one. What is the strangest thing that inspired one of your poems? And oh God, can I even say this? I was on a vacation in Mexico with a couple of friends, and a young waitress came through the room with a T-shirt with big black letters emblazoned across her breasts. And I say that because the words on the T-shirt were, "I have no tits." And it was the strangest thing I'd ever seen, especially since it was clearly not true. And I immediately turned to my friends and said, I have to write about this. And so I did. And that poem is actually in the book. So that's, yeah, sometimes, some language is just handed to you and you have to run with it and you think, what is going on here? And a question is always a good way to get a poem started. So that's the answer to that one. How do you decide what order your poems should be in? I really do what every writer does, which is to lay my poems out on the floor and crawl around the room and see what poems want to be together and what poems want to socially distance. And it's amazing how that works and how every poet I know does that to put their book together. So I really recommend it as a way to see your work laid out and try to get a feel for what belongs together and what order you want to put it in. Little trade secret there. Um, what else? Do you have a goal in mind or a message when you write a poem, or is it more organic? Sometimes I am trying to write about something I'm thinking about. It could be the nature of time, it could be my cats, or lost love, or the world. But in the actual writing, it turns out that I don't really know what I'm writing about, or that I'm discovering what I'm writing about as I do it. So that's the best kind of poem, I think, is the one that where I start out in one place and I get really surprised by where things go, and excited by that process. And that for me is one of the joys of writing, is just discovering what the poem wants to be as I'm writing it and letting the language lead me, and it does amazingly. Um, what have I been reading in lockdown to stay sane? I've actually had a terrible time trying to read anything at all. So, except journalism. So I read a lot of journalism and a lot online, but very few actual books. What I found I could do was listen to books, so I listened to a whole lot of them. And I think the next book I want to buy, or the next three books, are the Hilary Mantel Cromwell trilogy, which I just loved and loved every night, having somebody with an English accent lull me to sleep with stories of Cromwell and Henry VIII. And I'm really excited to now go get the trilogy and get some really nice hardbound copies of the three books, and dive into reading when I can read full books again. It's been really hard lately. In terms of poetry writing, I have done some writing, but I miss having that greater variety of experience. I mean, if I wrote a pandemic poem actually about what I'm doing during the pandemic, it would be, you know, get up in the morning, open the cat food, clean the cat box, make myself some food, toss the cats some treats, open some cans for the cat's dinner, uh, you know, go to sleep listening to a book. And that would be a pretty boring poem. So I'm looking forward to getting out in the world and having some more varieties of experience that will actually give me something in the world to write about. And the final question that Boulder Books asked was to read you a poem from my book. So it's kind of hard to find a representative poem because they are actually, they cover a lot of different subjects. But I thought I would read this one, which is a shorter one, and also seems to have been one that has spoken to a lot of people and offered them some solace in a hard time. So this is called "To the Woman Crying Uncontrollably in the Next Stall." And you've probably either been that person or heard that person if you're a woman. If you ever woke in your dress at 4 a.m., ever closed your legs to someone you loved, opened them for someone you didn't, moved against a pillow in the dark, stood miserably on a beach, seaweed clinging to your ankles, paid good money for a bad haircut, backed away from a mirror that wanted to kill you, bled into the back seat for lack of a tampon, if you swam across a river under rain, sang using a dildo for a microphone, stayed up to watch the moon eat the sun entire, ripped out the stitches in your heart because why not? If you think nothing and no one can, listen, I love you. Joy is coming. So thanks, and I have to believe that joy is coming for all of us, and hopefully soon. So thanks to Boulder Books for giving me a chance to talk a little bit about my book.